Good morning and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Chelsea Cousins and I am your host here for today's webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. We're excited to talk about mobile strategy for both churches and organizations. Let me know if you're here by popping in the chat box saying hello, hey, where you're from. We just love to know that you are with us today. A couple hospitality things to get us started. First, this webinar will be recorded and will be sent to you after we have completed it today. And so be looking for that in your inbox. If you find it valuable or there's some information that you'd like to share with your colleagues, feel free to send them the link and pass this information on to others that you work closely with. The second thing is, if you have any questions throughout the webinar today, we would love to answer your questions at the end. So feel free to drop those questions either in the chat box or in the Q&A section. Both of those sections we can see here on our end, and so at the end of the webinar there'll be a couple minutes and we will get to all your questions if time allows. So go ahead and do that at any point throughout the next 30 minutes, and like I said, we'll get to those questions at the end. Next, I would love to ask you guys a couple of questions to get us started. So when thinking in terms of mobile strategy for your organization, your ministry, your church, we're curious how many people are on staff at your organization. If you don't mind, if you have a second, drop that in the chat box. We'd love to know how many people are on staff and how many people are on your team that you're working with. The second question is, how big is your organization? Do you serve less than 500 people, 500 to 1,000 people, or 1,000 plus people? And so whether you're a church and your congregation or your attendees falls in one of those levels, if you don't mind letting us know, that would be great. We'll help tailor our content a little bit to the size of your organization, or you're a ministry or a nonprofit. Just let us know how many people you serve on average. Again, the options are less than 500, 500 to 1,000, or 1,000 plus. With that, while you're typing your answers in the chat box, I'm going to go ahead and give you a little overview and tell you a little bit about our presenter, Chad Williams. Chad Williams is the CEO of 5Q, and he has been mastering digital media since 1995. He helps nonprofits make a positive difference by offering digital strategies to the organizations around the world. Out of his passion for social good and technology, Chad created 5Q. 5Q is a full suite of web development and interactive marketing services for dozens of ministries and for-purpose organizations. Some of the organizations Chad and his team has had the privilege to work with include Revive Our Hearts, Joni and Friends, Awana, Got Questions Ministry, Life Action Ministries, the Bowery Mission, CEF, and that is just a few among many others. And so with that, I would love to hand it over to Chad. We're excited to learn about Church Mobile Strategy 101. And so Chad, with that, I'll let you take it away.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Chelsea. I am so excited to be able to share with you today on church mobile strategies. So as Chelsea mentioned, we work with a lot of national ministries, but what is the institution that God has provided to fulfill his purposes? It's the church. And so anytime I have an opportunity to help those who are directly involved with doing ministry inside of a church in any way, that just really cranks my crank and gets me excited. So I'm excited to be sharing with you today. One thing that you should know about me is that I'm a family guy. So you can stop counting right now because there's 9 of us in that picture and 7 kids and my wife and I. So you can tell from that I'm somewhat of a family guy. But I'll confess, in raising kids, I've gotten angry, I've been demeaning, I've misjudged, I've made wrong assumptions, all in the name of parenting. And so I'm not standing before you saying that I'm a perfect parent, far from it. But I have tried to build relationships with my kids. And some of the ways that I've done that is, or one of the ways I've done that is that every Friday, when I'm available, when I'm in town and schedule allows it, I try to take one of my kids out for lunch. And they have their choice. They can either go to Subway or Subway. And obviously they choose Subway. And so every Friday, I take one of them out. They can count on it. It's something that they can count on. Well, this is Tiffany. She's in college right now, but when she was in elementary school, I took her out on a Friday lunch. We live outside of town, so walked into the house and said, "Oh, Tiff, you ready to go?" We jumped into pickup and drove 5 miles into town and hit the subway, walked in the door, walked through the line. Tiffany ordered her normal foot-long turkey sandwich with American cheese, lettuce, and tomato. And I ordered my typical 6-inch wheat on chicken carbonaro, pepper jack cheese with spinach, cucumbers, and just one swipe of chipotle sauce. I hate it when they put too much on there. Just one swipe. Then we get our 2 cookies, M&M for Tiffany and macadamia nut for me, and our water. You can see that's kind of our typical Friday fare for lunch. We grab our table. Usually it's one of those taller standing tables with the benches or the tall chair. And we're sitting there, and all of a sudden I see through the line, a friend of mine, Clark, is coming through the line. He gets finished through the line. I say, "Clark, good to see you, man." And Clark and I grew up. He's a little bit younger than me, but we grew up in the same town and have a lot of the same friends. And so I said, "Hey, Clark, why don't you come on over, pull up a chair?" And I tell you, we just had a great time. Tiffany had a great time. Clark had a great time entering a conversation, finding out what was going on in Clark's life. And I had Tiffany share what's going on with her. And it was just a great time. And we finished the lunch, threw our trash away, walked out the door, jumped in the pickup, and we were heading down on the road back to home and back to the office. I said, "Tiffany, did you have a good time today?" And I turned over at her, and there was a big crocodile tear just coming out of the corner of her eye, just coming right down her cheek. Well, as a dad, most of the time I'm pretty clueless, but I could tell that something wasn't right. So I said, "Tiffany, what's wrong?" And she didn't say a word. I said, "Tiff, you didn't feel like you were able to connect with Daddy, were you?" And she just bit her lip and shook her head. I looked at my watch, checked my calendar, and realized I still had about another 45 minutes before my next meeting. So I said, "Hey, Tiff, hold on a second." So I whipped the car onto the shoulder, turned around, and we went back into town. And we ended up going to the YMCA. Just her and I hung out for another 30 minutes, kicking the racquetball around, and just had a more one-on-one relationship time. Well, I thought that I was physically present with my daughter, and being physically present would give her the ability to connect with me. But boy, was I wrong. And thankfully, Lord engineered it. I was able to still be able to spend some time and redeem the time. So you might be asking, well, why in the world am I at this session on mobile strategies for my church? And here's this guy just talking about his family. Well, I think that lessons that we learn as relate with people still have something to do with how we can best handle technology like mobile technology. So 2 things I just want to plant in your head is as you're thinking about mobile, think relationship. Think, how can we use mobile to be able to reach the most people and reach the congregation in ways that are meaningful to them? And secondly, is to be consistent. Every Friday, my kids can count on, hey, is Dad around? Whose turn is it to go out for lunch? And those 2 principles, thinking relationship and being consistent, putting your sermons up on a regular basis in the mobile app, communicating on a regular basis so that your congregation can know what to expect. Those 2 principles apply to mobile as well. So right off the top, I'll let you know that I go to a church of 200 folks. We have a staff, I think we've got a staff of 2 full-time and 2 part-time. And so it's not a huge church. And at the same time, as Chelsea mentioned earlier, we serve some very large ministries that serve lots and lots of people around the world. And so I'm privileged to be able to bring to bear the experience of both of going to a smaller church, but also serving large organizations, international organizations, and bringing both of those experiences to bear, and hopefully share some things that make sense to you around how to think about mobile for your church. A lot of people, when they think of new technology or they think mobile, they're like, man, where do I start? They're kind of like this guy right here, scratching his head, wondering, what in the world should I do next? Well, what we're going to cover today is 5 key things. I'm going to share with you a mobile mindset to have as you're thinking about what's the mindset we should have as we approach this new technology. I'm going to give you a framework so that you can evaluate whether or not this is something we should do or not in our church. Then I'm just going to give you the bottom line. Here's recommendations. Here's what I would recommend that you guys should be thinking about implementing in your setting. And then a few words about rollout. How do we roll that out to our congregation? And then we'll open up for some Q&A time. So first, a mobile mindset. So this chart right here shows how many hours people spend with digital media per day, not including work. And you can see it's almost 6 hours per day that they're spending in digital media, and almost 3.3 of those hours, you can see in that green bar, they're spending on their mobile devices. That is a crazy amount of time. So mobile today matters. The people in your congregation are on their mobile devices a lot. So the question is, how can your church gain just a slice of your congregation's time that they're spending on the mobile devices to be able to spend it doing things that have eternal significance for the kingdom through your church? So that's what we want to think about today. Let me tell you about Bobby. Bobby was a young pastor from Oklahoma, and in 2006, he was on a trip. And as he was leaving Chicago, O'Hare Airport there, he was standing in a long line like many of us have experienced before. And he was standing there again, 2006. There's nothing to do but look at the back of the head of the person in front of him. He got to thinking, what if I were able to use this downtime to be able to read scripture? Remember, he's a pastor. And you know what? That thought didn't leave him. He went home and he brainstormed with his church staff. Well, what if we can get the Bible into our congregation's hands using tools that they already have? And that led to a creation of a website. And in 2008, it led to creation of an app. Today, you know that app as YouVersion. In 2008, Bobby Grunwald at the Life Church created the first YouVersion Bible. And it was one of the first 200 apps that was placed on Apple's App Store when they first rolled it out. And today, that app has been downloaded to over 345 million unique devices. But how did it start? It started with a church staff member solving a problem for himself that ended up not just for his congregation, but the entire world would be able to benefit from as well. So the first mark of a healthy mobile mindset is to think ministry. How can I best use mobile technology to minister to my congregation? It's not just a channel. It's not just a way to get the sermon out there. Think ministry. How can I minister to the folks that we're interacting with? The second mark of a healthy mobile mindset is to think relationship. So I run a distributed company. That means that all of our staff are located all the way around the country. And yet twice a year, we bring everybody together to meet face to face, to meet in person. I think there's real benefit to that. And what I tell my team is, there's a reason that Jesus is God incarnate, that God put on flesh, came to this earth to be able to talk with people face to face. And where a mobile device can augment a lot of relationship, it cannot replace the face-to-face. And so even as you're thinking about what are the right things to do with mobile, the second mark of a healthy mobile mindset is to think relationship and conversation, not just proclamation and ways to generate donations. It's about relationship. The third mark of a healthy mobile mindset is to think personalized. So I want you to picture there is a young man, and he just moved into the area, into your city, and He does a Google search on his mobile device, and he comes across your church's website trying to figure out where he's going to go to church this next Sunday. And so he's on your church website for the very first time on a mobile device, and you can tell that he's within 30 miles of your church's zip code. What does he see on your website? Well, if it's like 99% of the websites out there, they're going to see exactly the same thing that everybody else sees. But we know that he's the first time to your website, that he's within driving distance, and that he probably, we can make an assumption, he probably is interested in coming to your church this Sunday. So why don't we give him a message that's tailored to him being the first time visiting your website? And that message might be something like, in my town, it's called Atlantic. Hey, welcome to Atlantic. We'd like to give you a personal invitation to come attend our church this Sunday. Click here to find more information. And so in today's world of technology, we can personalize the messages to fit the people that are coming to your website or to your mobile devices. Fourth mark of a healthy mobile mindset is that it should be integrated and it's ubiquitous as well. So the mobile device is one communication mechanism of many. So it needs to be integrated into all of your different communication mechanisms. One time we had an elder leader in our church. This was many years ago, that he really wanted the congregation to, quote, go paperless. And so we started posting all of the monthly newsletter online, post our ministry schedules online, and expecting people to go to the website to find that information. Well, unfortunately, we found that things were starting to fall through the cracks, that people weren't keeping up with the information. And the reason is because they were not used to going to a new location to be able to read about it, and they were used to having it pushed to them, whether it was mailed newsletter or emailed schedules. So the lesson from that is, as you're rolling out new communication methods, think along with, not instead of. So you want to be able to communicate in concert with, whether it's in print, whether it's on your website, whether it's in your mobile app. You want to communicate in all those mechanisms, really realizing that people read media in lots of different ways this way. And so you want to think along with, not instead of. The other part of integration is with mobile technologies, you want it to be integrated with your other staff management processes. And I want to talk a little bit more about that later. The fifth mark of a healthy mobile mindset is that it's dynamic. It's constantly changing. In fact, some of the things that we can learn from mobile aren't just from seeing what other churches are doing. I'm going to actually give you an example that came not from the church space, but from the education space. But here's what I want you to do right now. I want us to take an activity, take out a pen, or if you're typing on a computer, bring up an extra window in your Evernote. And I want you to think of 2 churches that you highly respect. Got those in mind? Write those churches down. And after this webinar, go and check out their website and see what they're doing in the mobile space. And what can you learn from them? And go to the App Store, both in the Android or the Apple, and see if they have an app out there, and see what they're using. See how they're using mobile technology to affect their congregation, and ask yourself, what can we learn and what can we apply to what we're doing with our church? So these are 5 marks of a healthy mobile mindset. And if you can tell, all of these have underpinning it, how can we best serve our audience? How can we best serve our congregation? Next, I want to give you guys a framework by which you can evaluate. So as you're looking at the options for mobile, what are the things that I should be thinking about, and what are the things we want to consider? So the first, again, going with the theme of relationship and serving your audience, you want to make things just super easy to use. If it's not going to be easy to use on a mobile device, people are not going to use it. So keep things super, super easy to use as you're evaluating whether or not this is something you should roll out. Secondly, make sure that what you're using works both for all the platforms that are available, both for primarily the Android and the iPhone. So if you don't have both of those phones and you're testing some mobile options, make sure you grab somebody in your congregation and say, hey, can you test this with both the iPhone and the Android platforms? Thirdly, you want to make sure that the features you offer on the mobile device are relevant to a mobile device. Just because you do it in the offline doesn't mean that you should necessarily do it on a mobile device. The things that work well are things like podcasts, events, audio, video. Those are things that work great in a mobile device. But should it replace your church bulletin as folks walk in the front door? Probably not. So make sure that you're tailoring the content and tailoring your offerings to what people might be doing in a mobile setting. Fourthly, it should be integrated with your other systems wherever possible. Example, when you upload a sermon to your website, that should also be available to your mobile app. You shouldn't have to upload it in multiple different places. Or if people make a donation, it should be easy to record. If they make a donation on your mobile app, it should be easy to record it into your donation system. So whenever possible, make it integrated so that your church staff doesn't have to do double entry across double work across multiple different platforms. And then price is a consideration. And for your church, price can go anywhere from free to, if you're building a custom mobile app, it can be as much as 6 figures. So just make sure that the price that you're paying fits your church needs. So bottom line, okay, Chad, what is it that you would recommend? So I'm going to go the way that I think about options in the mobile space. I'm going to give 3 different areas. One is for a small church, and similar to the one that I serve and attend in Atlantic, Iowa, 200 or so folks. Second, I'm going to look at some of the external. So if you're in a larger church, and how can you create a mobile experience where it's external facing, where it's ministering to your congregation, the people who are coming or could be coming to your church. And then thirdly, I want to give you some options as it relates to your internal. If you're in a larger church, you may have a staff of number of people, and how can we use mobile technology to be able to better communicate with each other and to be able to communicate internally with our congregation. I want to give you some options for that. So first, in the small church arena, the most important thing is make sure that your website looks good on a mobile device. We call that making sure it's responsive. It responds to the device that it's on. That is probably the most important thing that any and every church should have, is make sure that your website is responsive. If it's not, lots of different ways to be able to make it responsive. You can send an email to me. I'll have my contact information at the end. You can let me know at the end. So in our church, we also use Facebook groups as a way for folks to communicate. And a recommendation here is to use groups as opposed to using pages, because number one, Facebook is giving more emphasis to their groups than they are to pages. And if you post to pages, not everybody will see your posts all the time. Whereas if you post to group, more other people are more likely to see those. Thirdly, we use a system called Remind. And this is that service I mentioned earlier that did not come from the church space. It's actually from the educational space. And what that allows us to do, I know our youth pastor is the one who turned me on to this. He's the one that uses it. So when he has a message that he wants to send to the parents of his youth, he logs into Remind, types up the message, sends it out, and it automatically sends to the people who say they want to receive things by email. Those people get an email. If they say, I want to get things by the Remind app, that'll come to them as an alert on their phone in the Remind app. Those that said, I want to be notified via text message, those folks will get a message in their text message. So that he only has to draft and send that message one time, and it sends to everybody on his communication list in the mechanism that they said they want to be communicated with. Free service, free tool, but super, super helpful and useful for our youth pastor and others of our church staff to be able to connect with different people in different ways. Fourthly is a system that our church worship team uses called the Planning Center. And I'll talk more about everything that Planning Center can do in a little bit. But for us, and the way our church is using it right now, primarily is for our worship. So they're able to communicate, hey, here's the schedule of what we're going to be singing this Sunday. And then the team, as they get together and practice, they actually have the music right in their mobile app and right on their iPads. So they're playing the music right directly from their iPad and all those different areas. So these are the options that I would recommend if you're using a small church. If you're in a larger church and you're wanting to communicate with your congregation, there's two options I recommend. One is Aware 3, and the third is the church app. And I'm going to talk more about the church app. They've been around a long time, probably have the largest market share, but in terms of the core features that if you want an app for your church that they cover, they pretty much cover all the basics plus some, the donations, the online sermons, the media, all those different things. Thirdly, I'd mention your church content management system or your church CHMS. A lot of times they will throw a mobile app in for free. So definitely take a look at that. But those would be things like Tithely, or Ministry One creates one that integrates with lots of churches, or Simple Church CRM. The trick is you want to make sure that it's still user-friendly for the folks that are coming. Remembering the first principle: does it work for the church? Third is, what about for your internal folks? I would highly recommend you look at a system called the Planning Center. I'm not going to say a lot about it right now, but it gives a ton of options for internal management that interacts with people on the outside. Go to their websites, Google Planning Center for churches, and you'll be able to find it. Real quickly, as you roll out new initiatives, just 5 key principles. One is to think augment, not replace. Your mobile doesn't, we've already talked about that. Your mobile doesn't replace, but it augments with the ways you're already communicating. Secondly is to promote that mobile app. Promote that, hey, you can get this on your phone. Promote that Remind service that people can be signing up for. Third is identify a resident expert so that when a person has a question, you know exactly where they can come to, and people in the congregation can know exactly where to go to if they need help with the technology piece. Fourthly is to keep it updated. You've got to keep that consistency, keeping it updated, keeping it fresh, keeping the content there. And then lastly is don't undervalue the importance of promotion. In the 1850s, there was a shoe salesman who had a vision for reaching the children of downtown Chicago. And so this young man, he concentrated his efforts on providing Sunday school to children. And by 1860, over 1,000 kids and their parents were attending church or attending Sunday school every week. Then in 1876, a church was built. They called it the Chicago Avenue Church. That church could seat over 10,000 people. Today, that church is known as the Moody Church, and its founder was D.L. Moody. His preaching at the time drew thousands of people every week. And today, that same church still preaches the gospel. But their reach is so much broader than what it was a century and a half ago. Today, their weekly message is heard on over 210 countries. And over half of those listening are listening on a mobile device. Why do I say that? It's the same message that D.L. Moody was preaching back in the 1800s, but it's different delivery and a larger audience. So the message is the same, but methods change. I just want to encourage you to be creative in how you can use mobile technology for your church in a way that makes a real difference. Right before we go to Q&A, I just wanted to mention When we were talking earlier about a way that you can personalize the experience that people have when they come to your website, either on their cell phone or on their desktop or laptop, there's a service that you can use called Journity. It is a service, self-disclosure, it's a service that 5Q has created, but it helps ministries and church websites personalize those experiences. So I didn't just encourage you to go to journity.com. You can find more information there. We are running really tight on time, but any questions that anybody has about mobile in your church setting?
Thank you, Chad. We appreciate that valuable content. One question that we have is, you mentioned that one of the first recommendations you would make as in your position, in your experience and expertise working in the digital space, was making sure that the website for a church or nonprofit or an organization is responsive. Can you talk about why that is so important and how easy it is to do that? And then the follow-up question to that is really, is that something that can be done internally, somebody who's managing the back end of the website, or should our organizations reach out to whoever is hosting their website to help them make sure it's responsive and engaging?
Yeah, great question. So when websites were first created, they were created to fit in a specific resolution, meaning it looked really good on a desktop. But then when these mobile devices start rolling out, you would look at the same website on your mobile device, and if you have to get out a magnifying glass to be able to read what was on there, that's because it's not responding to the screen. And so that's what we're talking about when we say it's mobile responsive, and that it responds to the screen that you're looking at. So the content may stay the same, but the way that it's presented, the presentation radically changes depending on if I'm looking at it in my mobile device compared to looking at it on a desktop. And that's huge, because if a person comes to their website on their mobile device, which your church website could be getting as much as 50% of your traffic coming through mobile devices, and they're not able to read it, they're going to be out of there. They're not going to be able to read and see the ministry that you have to offer to them. And the way that you make it responsive is you really do have to change the entire website. It's not just a turn on a switch and make it responsive, not responsive. So you need to redesign the website in a way that takes into account those mobile devices. Now, the good thing is that most frameworks today, if you were to create it in a WordPress, it will kind of by default create it in a way that's responsive, but you will need to create a new website that will be able to serve the mobile needs of those that are coming as well. So I'd encourage you to reach out to your website hosting company. Would be one place to start, but really the organization or the person that built your website, and ask them, hey, can we reskin it, refreshen it up in a way that's going to be mobile responsive? That'd be the person that you want to talk to.
Okay, thank you. And Chad, one last question for you. I know that we're pushing time, but I think this is a good question, is can you give us an example or a couple examples of very easy ways that you could incorporate personalization on a church website?
Yeah, so how can we incorporate personalization on a church website? Well, the first is to identify who your audience is. And so the example I gave earlier, if you have somebody coming to your website, first time visit, you can tell that they're not engaged, first time visit, and they're inside of a 30-mile radius of your zip code, which you can tell that with a product like Journity. You want to give them a different message than a person who is coming to your website all the time. And let's say they've self-identified, they've said that, hey, I'm interested in children's ministry. So then if that person comes, you might say, here's the next events around the children's ministry that you want to be aware of. Whereas the person who comes who's never been to your church website before, you might give them a welcome message saying, hey, welcome to the E-Free Church website. We'd love to have you join us for church this Sunday. So those would be two very simple examples. And obviously you could get as complex as you wanted to as you think about, but I would encourage you to think about the users. Who are the types of users that are coming to our website, and how can we personalize the messages to them? Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much. And with that, Chad, those are all the questions we have. So I'll let you go ahead and wrap it up for us today.
All right. Thanks, everybody. And again, feel free, if you want the slide deck, feel free to contact me. You can see my name and information on the slides there. Feel free to reach out to me anytime. We're happy to help. Thanks so much.